My anxiety was on 100. I felt like my world was crashing around me. And I'm not gonna lie, like I just felt like I'm just gonna give up on this thing. Like I'm tired of, going through it.
So mistakes cannot be selfish. It can be this thing that we judge ourselves and hide in the closet about. And
Sometimes that mistake feels so heavy, you like, don't be
Mhm.
embarrassed. Talk to
Right.
somebody else about it and get into community.
That mistake, while, it feels like $150,000 in equity mistake, it feels like a $2,000 a month rental mistake in just pure income. It's a valuable one that's informing my decisions about
So it's a fail forward and not a fall backwards, right?
what's happening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Sense Monday. I'm so excited to be back here with you all. And I'm here with none other than Candace Hunt and Dana Marie Sims Falk, my co conspirators in faith and in sisterhood. I love these two women next to me. And we're digging into failure, right? Yes, we're going to talk about failure, where making mistakes actually matters. That's what we're going to dig in today. And of course, we're going to bust a myth today. You already know we're going to definitely bust a Sense Monday myth. And we're going to dig into some things that, may seem like they're the end of the world, but they're actually a part of the process. And to add a little spice to the myth busting, we're going to talk about, how to flip those mistakes in your mindset to make them a reality in your future. So let's get started. Let's talk about that one mistake, right? That felt like a failure, that felt like so much pain. And I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, whatever that might be, that experience in your life and how it shaped you into the person that you are today. So who's going to tackle this one first?
I'm gonna let Dana go.
Must be Jamila.
You go voluntold. Wait, I think Dana's that way.
Must
You
be
go
Jamila.
you go voluntold her. It's gotta be Jamila. Okay.
Yeah, Jamila, share your mistake, and then we go get inspired and motivated to share ours. I have
Man.
so many. I have so many. I don't know
I
where to
think
start.
that's the thing. I think we probably are rambling through our minds, like, which mistake do I want to pinpoint right now? Like, we can probably say all of them if we have them listed, right? I can't think of one specific mistake, but let me just say why I can't.
Yeah.
I believe mistakes are a part of your growth process, right? So I don't know, probably since I was a kid, like every mistake that I've made, I'm just like, okay, you made that mistake. What did you learn from it? And keep going. If I stop at the mistake, then I'm dead. I'm
Mhm.
DOA. I always say, like, you dead on arrival, right? Let me think of one more recent mistake. And my sisters know this. So, this particular mistake had me absolutely freaking out. My anxiety was on 100. I felt like my world was crashing around me. And I'm not gonna lie, like I just felt like I'm just gonna give up on this thing. Like I'm tired of, going through it. And, I talk a lot about legacy. So this is absolutely part of the legacy that my mom left for her children and grandchildren. And I dropped the ball on something that I don't know how I kind of, you know, it was not on my radar. And it felt like I made the biggest mistake of my life. I felt like nothing I had done in the last, I don't know how many years of my life mattered. That one thing felt like a 1,000 ton weight had hit me, and I couldn't see my way out of this murky water. But what I learned from that mistake that I, in a lot of ways, internalized as a failure was, hold on, you have past experiences. What's in your tool belt, right? So I had to go through every twist and turn of the emotional roller coaster from valley to darkness to get up out of your bed. You can't fight laying down, to going back to, okay, wait a second. I can breathe again. Hold on. I have common sense. Hold on. I have, you know, some things that I can go back to that I had to do before. But what happens when some people don't have the experience of that specific mistake? Because I'm talking about something specific, right? So if you don't have something that can relate to that specific mistake, so you fell down, this is something new, you've never had it happen to you before, you don't have something to relate back to say, I can get back up out of this thing the way that I did, right? Well, your other mistakes also lend to the fact that you can overcome failure. Failure is not final, right? So I had to navigate. For some of us, it's that quick snapback. You don't have to navigate all of the waters. And in some instances, you don't have to navigate all of the waters, meaning you don't have to go through the peaks and the valleys. You go from, I feel 100% like a failure to I'm winning, right? In this particular instance, it felt like I had to go from 100% failure to 99. I'm doing a little better to 98. Okay, you got the steps to 97. And then eventually it was okay, girl, like you're not dumb. You got an MBA, you got a master's in accounting. Like this ain't dumb. Like you're not, textbook dumb. And the bigger part of that is if you got up before, what makes you think you can't get up this
Mm,
time? The outcome of the fight might be different because I still didn't know what the outcome of the fight was going to be. But I knew that I couldn't fight this thing laying in my bed worrying about it. And I think that's where failure puts us in a chokehold
mm,
because we feel like the failure is the final piece. But when we realize, okay, wait a second, in grammar school, I didn't always get an A, or I wasn't always the best on the team, or I fell down on my bike. It's something that simple and I got back up. Or like I'm watching my grandson now play T-ball. I didn't hit the ball off of the tee, the last time. Whatever that was, we have to go back to even that very basic moment to understand that this thing right here is not final. In addition to that, everything that you failed at, this is one thing that I absolutely believe in. Everything that I fail at, I fail forward.
right.
I don't fail. You don't fail and go like 10 steps back. You fail on experience and you go forward. So even this last experience that I had, okay, so now I gotta jot some things down differently. I need to be a little bit more organized. Maybe then I won't have the panic attack that I had trying to figure out what's what, where things are, so on and so forth. You have to take accountability to why you feel like you failed at something because it is a piece of your accountability, right? But to also know that I'm failing forward because there's a lesson in this. And one thing I know for sure, because my mom taught me that in every lesson there's a blessing, I'm better forward, right? I'm better forward. So I guess that's how I feel about failure and failing in a recent experience, I would say, where I really felt like, girl, you didn't messed up big time. Like this is about legacy and you are the legacy holder. You're the one that's supposed to be making sure the torch is passed and you dropped it. That was a heavy weight, man. And I'm not even saying, I'm fresh out of it. I'm still in it, but I have new eyes on it. How about that?
That's good. That's good. New eyes on it
Very
and better forward. That feels like a t-shirt in the making for Ralio Designs.
better forward. I like it.
Better forward. Better forward. So Candace, you got one for us?
Yeah, I mean, do I have one? I have many, just like
Right?
Dana.
Right.
I don't know. I don't even know if I thought about like, oh, let me share this one. A couple things came to mind when you first started talking about it, and it was something that Riley and I and Levi and I actually talk about often is that we make mistakes every day. So I made a mistake yesterday. I made a mistake this morning. And look at me. I'm here with my joy and my glory on this call talking about mistakes. So I really couldn't narrow it down to just one. There's been several things, whether it was in my career, whether it was in my relationships, whether it was just anything that I was doing on a daily basis, like I'm just bound to make a mistake. So I don't know if I even think about them as such anymore. It's just, hey, I'm moving through life with uncertainties, with this opportunity to make a choice. And I'm 100% responsible for whatever choice that I make and how I respond to the choices that people make for me. But there's a song that came to mind. Of course, y'all know the soul ministry is always in my head. And the minute you said it, Riley and Levi and I sing this song. And anytime we talk about somebody made a mistake, or, I start to hear some negative self talk, it's a song by the Evolved teacher. And it's, when I make a mistake, it's okay, okay, okay. My bounce back muscle says success is on the way. And I think that's exactly what Dana was talking about in terms of bouncing back. Like, we may not have evidence of us making it through those specific mistakes, but we do have evidence that no mistake we've made has killed us or another person, right? And so we have to draw from that understanding, so that, because we can get into like this judgment zone of when we do make a mistake, is I can't believe I did that. And I think it's okay, have a pity party for one night only, but then, go back and gather that evidence of when mistakes didn't kill you, they make you better. And that helps activate that bounce back muscle. And then the other thing that I thought about, well, not thought about, what I did, any word somebody mentions, because I feel like we loose with vocabulary out here. We just be saying words and sometimes I have to check myself. Like, I was telling somebody, like, I said professional the other day, and I was like, well, before I say that again, let me look up what professional is. So I did the same thing for the last topic we talked about, and today I was like, well, what the heck is a mistake? And it's a blunder in the choice of, right? So that's choice. A mistake was a choice that we made that did not land to our expectations. A misunderstanding of the meaning or intention of something. So we misunderstood what the potential outcome could be. I think I've referred to it before as like a mistake. So because my awareness and my understanding was where it was, this is the choice that I made that led to this thing that was not desirable. So now I have new understanding based on the mistake, right? And then the third one that I thought was that stood out for me was to be wrong or to identify wrongly. And so when I think about all the mistakes that I made last week, how maybe I'll use that one. I yelled at the kids last week, and I'm on this no yelling fast right now, and I yelled. And so I had to go to them afterwards and say, I was wrong, and I apologize that I yelled. Let's use, I can use my words more kindly and we can get to the same result. But I think for me, I had to be willing to admit that I was wrong. And once you, in my opinion, once you are willing to admit, like just willing to be wrong sometimes, because I think it happens daily. Like, I ain't trying to be right all the time, I'm trying to get it right, right? So I'm willing to admit and acknowledge that I'm going to be wrong. I reserve the right to change my mind. And then mistakes, to Dana's point, they do become like lessons and blessings from the lesson. Is that how they say it? Blessings from the lesson. So yeah, that's one mistake that I've made, and I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to get a new understanding, a new take on things, a mistake, and make a choice that's going to, I'm still going to be uncertain about. I'm going to just try again, right? I'm going to try again at that thing, right? I think we got a lot of examples out there, and I could think of a business industry one that I always use as an example. And I don't know if I have any near me. I do. This is a sticky note, right? So the guy who invented the sticky note actually was trying to make an adhesive that did not stick. He got it wrong he tried multiple times to make an adhesive that would live up to the current glues in the world. And instead, what he ended up with is one of the most popular stationaries in the world, right? A sticky note. My kids play with sticky notes. That's why I don't buy toys. So we got sticky notes every day gonna wear. But that example, I think, whatever my mistake is, sometimes I often think about that. Like, what can I turn this into? What can I turn it into? One time I went crazy on somebody, and I was like, oh, well, that I'm not that proud of, that I was, going off on somebody. But guess what? What can I turn this into? A higher sense of confidence. I know how to stand up for myself now. So I have evidence that it's not all bad. I was wrong. I did something wrong. And boom, I turned it into this in the way that I'm, living my life going forward. So that's the start of, I guess, my answer.
She said the start of good though, very good. I love the definition, which is kind of what sparked what I was going to share. I had a few things written down. Of course, as you both have mentioned, we make mistakes, probably from day one to now, or at least early on to now. And for me, the one that has been kind of sitting with me a lot lately that I've been thinking about lately is one that I made in 2000 and it was 2010, 2009, 2010, right as the year was changing over. And it was a lot going on at that time for me, but I had the opportunity to take a role in Southern California. And I just bought a house not even, I don't know, probably 10 months, 9 months before that in Arkansas. I was working for, one of the largest retailers in the world in Arkansas. You probably know who that is. And so I bought a home while I was there. It's what I knew to do, get a home. And I got a great deal on the home. And I'm going to give you the numbers so that you can walk this journey with me. But it's one that sits with me. And that was 14 years ago. It consistently stays with me. And how I share that now, I think is super important. And I'll tell you why. So I bought the house in 2009. It was either like 105, 105,000 to 110,000. I think it was about 2,000 square feet, three-car garage, close to an acre, maybe something like that. But really nice home, great, more house than I could even need. I was single at the time. But then I got this opportunity to go to Southern California, same company, great opportunity, and I took it. So I took the opportunity, and with the relocation package and the way it was written, there was obviously they pay your mortgage, a bunch of different stuff, and you get a certain amount of time to sell your house, or you can keep your house. But my mind wasn't in a place, I wasn't at a point in real estate where I understood the power of keeping that piece of property and renting it out. Even though I was going to Southern California, I didn't know that I had all these options available because I was a baby, a newborn to real estate. So I leave, I go to Southern California, I end up selling the home, and I probably look the home up at least twice a year. And I did it this past weekend actually. And so I sell the home, make a little bit of money, but now I don't have the liability of having to worry about paying that mortgage plus my living expenses, which were twice, sometimes three times the amount in Southern California. Easy. It's beautiful, great weather, probably one of the best places I've ever lived. But I went from paying about $800 a month from a mortgage, somewhere around there, $900, to right under $2,000 for a two-bedroom condo that I was leasing. So very different economics for my finances, even though I was making more money and all that. So I sold the house. Great, great, good sell. Move on. Yay, that worked out well. And then it informed my decision for the house that I'm in now. But when I look back on it, again, I purchased it, I believe it was somewhere between 105 and 110. I can't remember the exact amount. And the house is worth over 350,000 now. Had I rented the house out, I would have roughly collected somewhere around 20,000 in rental dollars every year, but the house would have been paid off at this point, right? And I'd be collecting about 2,000 a month. Excuse me. I'd be collecting about 2,000 a month in rent with no mortgage and just at this point insurance and taxes. For as long as I would own the property, I would just be collecting rent for a property that I hadn't seen in 14 years, hadn't been to Arkansas in 14 years. That's what I would have been collecting on that property. Huge mistake on my part. Huge mistake because I didn't fully understand. I was a baby in the game. And so I had to take this mistake because of my level of education in an industry that I was just getting my feet wet in. And so the reason why I recall it, I don't beat myself up about it, but the reason why I recall it is I know the lesson wasn't just for me. It was for others as well. And I was able to share this with someone just, I think it was on Friday, again, because I shared this with him several times. I shared it with him again, and it's influencing the decision that he's making about investment properties currently. And it's informing and informing future decisions for me as well, as it relates to the current property I'm in as well as my rental property. So that mistake, while it feels like $150,000 in equity mistake. It feels like a $2,000 a month rental mistake in just pure income. It's a valuable one that's informing my decisions about real estate specifically and assets specifically today. But it's not only helping me, it's helping a lot of other people over the last probably 10 years. I probably realized the mistake as I was buying the home that I'm currently in. That's when I realized. So that was about 2013, so about 4 years later. And so for the last 10 years, that's helped a lot of people. When I say a lot of people, hundreds of people, that story has helped a lot of people. And I hope that it helps some people here. That asset is unbelievable. It's an unbelievable asset. And if you're able to look at it from a different lens, because that was the takeaway, I could only see it one way. If I wasn't physically there, I couldn't hang on to it. But there are so many different ways to get to a result that doesn't involve you selling that property or whatever it is that you're going through or whatever mistake that you might be dealing with. There's so many different ways to approach it if you're open to, whether that's reading, a mentor, a coach, just someone, just being able to reach out and talk to someone. I think that to me was the real lesson in that, is that if I had just broadened my horizon and said, okay, well, how else could I possibly even do this? And that energy alone, I think, would have attracted some alternative answers to that mistake, that huge financial mistake that I made, that, like I said, is blessing other people, but influences my real estate, influences other decisions that I make in business as well. So that's the mistake on the financial side. For what's you guys' thoughts on that?
I gotta chime in for just a second because Candace said something, and then what you just said, it definitely kind of triple underscores this for me. Number one, mistakes are informative. Number two, mistakes are humbling. And number three, yes, mistakes can be humiliating. But what I would also say, because I am forever the optimist, I am forever the glass is half full girl. You could not have this lens or mindset without having had gone through that mistake. So you also have to look at it from this point of view, which this is how I look at it. And let me correct my words. I hate to tell people what they have to do. I would challenge us to look at things from the lens that had I not made that mistake, how would I have grown? Right? So let's just say in that last scenario that you gave us, Jay, you held on to this amazing property and perhaps you never thought about selling this property, but perhaps you never thought about even buying another one after that either. Because now you have the luxury of this one property that's providing you income over income over income over income. Perhaps you would have never thought about, why I need more doors,
Right. Exactly.
right?
It's
So I
true.
think of mistakes. I don't know. I don't know. Again, I think as people will hear my voice through this podcast, I'm forever looking at things from the lens, well, it could be different. My aunt and uncle have a similar story. They bought a brownstone in Jersey City in the 70s. And if anyone knows anything about Jersey City, New Jersey, it actually is right across the Hudson from New York City. Like, it's just one train ride, from the city. So very convenient. You still have the opportunity of building a great family life, so on and so forth. They bought this brownstone that is like, my uncle's a carpenter, so he had to do some work in the brownstone. Beautiful brownstone, though, right? In the 70s. So in the 70s, they bought this brownstone for about $65,000. If I gave you the address to this brownstone today, where Jersey City has now become the new Mecca, it's become the true counterpart to New York City. As a matter of fact, you have more people migrating across the water into Jersey City than wanting to stay in the city because taxes are cheaper, rent is cheaper. That house today that they bought in the 70s for about 65 to $69,000 is now worth over 3.5 million. But had they held on to that house and they didn't sell it in the 80s when they sold it, they probably never would have went to California and bought a house in California where they experienced the West Coast and their kids got to see the redwood forest and all of those things. Or they probably wouldn't have bought the house that they bought in Virginia. Or they probably wouldn't have bought the house that they're now in Miami that's paid for, where she now has a beautiful life over the last 40 years as the Miami midwife. So we have to look at these things again. They're lessons. Some of them are humbling, some of them are humiliating, right? Because who wants to lose out on what they think is a great opportunity to grow from where you are, especially when we're talking about a financial gain? But we also have to look at all the other things we gained because we had that one simple mistake. I like how Candace put that. So we look at it like that was just a mistake. Okay, it got you that time, but now we know that we can also buy foreclosures for $100,000 in some of those same places and spaces. And we don't have to have one property that has a 3-car garage. We can probably have 5 of them that have a 1-car garage, and they provide us way more income than that property probably would have provided us. So I think we have to, I look at things from the lens that if I didn't go through this mistake, then I probably would have stayed the same person.
Mm.
That mistake again pushed me forward. That mistake helped me to see, okay, I got to get some other things in order. But that mistake was also my blessing because we don't know after how many years of us probably having this home, the things that we would have had to repair in that house. So there's a lot. I think this is a really in depth, very fruitful. We can look at things from really a ton of different angles. And probably I would love to hear what our audience feels about even, some of the mistakes that they've had in their life. And what this is also, in my opinion, showing us is don't be afraid to make
Mm.
mistakes again. Mistakes are not avoidable. They're not avoidable for a couple of reasons, but can I tell y'all the number one reason why mistakes are not avoidable?
Give us the number
If you
one.
can avoid a mistake, then why do you need God? What do you
That
need him
part.
for? If you don't have to mess up, then you don't need a testimony. A
That's
mistake
right.
is just a test. If we don't have mistakes, I mean, at the end of the day, I love my sisters to death. They guided me through that thing that I shared with y'all was my mistake. They helped me to, even with prayer, they helped me to see, girl, get your butt up. But at the end of the day, I had to go and journal and say, God, help me to see clear. Help me to, use the things, the gifts, the tools, the knowledge, the resources that you've already equipped me with because you knew this thing was about to happen to me. So that
Because you're
means
all
you already
knowing. Yeah.
prepared me, but I didn't take all of the notes. So help me to see clearer. And that's how I got through the mistakes. That's how we get through mistakes.
Yeah. Good.
Without a mistake, we don't need our Heavenly Father or whoever it is that how you relate to Him or whatever you call Him. There is a higher being for each and every one of us. So I would say, let mistakes be a part of your history because you
Mm.
can't go back and change the mistake, but you for sure can use the mistake as part of your stepping stool and your launch pad. Because for one thing for sure, you're going to have another mistake.
It's coming.
Yes, it's
That's good.
coming.
That's good. And I think as we wrap up this episode, I think one of the myths that we busted just by having this dialogue is, and you guys have probably heard this, if you fail, maybe it's not for you, right? Maybe it's not for you. But in fact, it is because, as you mentioned and what you were just saying, mistakes open the door to the possibilities, your ability to,
Look at
to learn and
Candace's
evolve.
example. This guy fell how many times? He wasn't looking to make, 3M sticky notes. He was
Right,
like,
Yeah,
I'm trying to, even
right,
WD-40 has the
right,
similar story.
right.
same story. Yep.
KFC has
Yeah.
a similar story.
Yes.
This
So it is
can I let me
true.
say something real quick too, because Dana, you gave 3 bars real quick on like mistakes are, and I was like, oh shoot, my pen wasn't out fast enough.
That's why you can
Eh,
rewind the podcast and listen
yes,
again.
yes, yes, and that just shows how organic this really is. And so, and then Jamila, your example was phenomenal because I loved how you talked about how your mistake has helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
right? And the reason we know about the sticky note example is because it was shared. So mistakes cannot be selfish. It can be this
Mm,
thing that
mm,
we
mm.
judge ourselves and hide in the closet about, and
Right.
don't want to tell anybody because you want them to think that, I just made this adhesive and it worked the first time. That's actually our responsibility, is to share these mistakes. That's why I do it with my kids. That's why I can humble myself enough to go and apologize, so that, one, yes, it informs the next, the decisions that they make and how we're moving around the house or in our daily lives, but it also gives them permission to not judge themselves for the mistakes they make. And as kingdom ambassadors, as professionals, I think that's a part of our responsibility, is to share. Hey, this is when it didn't work. That's why I have authority to tell you or to suggest to you or submit to you about how you should do it. Right. And then the other thing I thought about, and I know Dana, you and I talked about this a long time ago, and it's something that actually plays in my mind often, and it's from Power Moves, because I told you we were out here loose with these words, y'all. We just, everything got to have the same response. So give yourself grace in the name of Jesus, right? So, grace, I give you grace. Grace is sufficient. Great, all these things about grace. And yes, that is a part of the judgment, the not judging, but just being aware, so it informs how you move. But what I don't want to do is tell people that grace is always gonna meet them at the end of their bad choices. So my thought process and what's always going through my head is, because I made this mistake and because I have this new understanding, am I going to make a better choice, or am I going to make another poor choice, or am I going to make a more accountable choice? Accountable to the lesson that I learned, right? So yeah, it requires accountability, and not this expectation that, well, I'm just going to keep making mistakes and I'm going to always be forgiven. Yes, and now you are responsible for and you are required to use this information to move you forward. So it's a fail forward and not a fall backwards, right? I'm not saying that part happens perfectly every time, but again, I can say it the way I'm saying it now because that's the tape that's playing in my head. And now I'm conscious of it. So I'm not out here making, 15,000 unconscious choices a day. Now, because I read that line in Power Moves, I'm always moving my choices and my mistakes through that. Yes, I am giving myself grace, but I'm holding myself accountable to, well, I don't know if I necessarily want to do that again. Like that ain't gonna, that's not, and I have the wisdom and the knowledge and the tools to not. So if I do, I'm just being irresponsible. So I'm not being mean about it, but like that's kind of where I am in my journey of, I'm responsible now for making better choices and not expecting grace to just always meet me on the other side of my poor choices.
That's good. That's good.
It's really
So
good.
the myth that we busted is, yeah, failure happens, mistakes happen. It is for you, and it is for the future you as well as others. So we definitely
Hmm.
busted that myth, and I hope it helps someone in the
That's good.
audience to embrace it and lean into it with some joy, right? I know that sounds like a little bit of an oxymoron, to lean into failure, but let's lean into that with some joy. And that
And don't
wraps,
lean in alone. Get in community so you can
yeah,
lean in with somebody else. Sometimes that mistake feels so heavy, you like, don't be
Mhm.
embarrassed. Talk to
right.
somebody else about it and get into community.
That's so important because you
Hey,
can't hold it to yourself, like Candace said, and you just reiterate, because
And
it's
it ain't
not
no
it's
new
not done.
mistakes. They
It
all been made
nothing.
before.
man,
They've
nothing
all been
new.
made
Come on.
before. Days
Thank
Come on.
the
before.
sun.
Absolutely. Man,
We're gonna have to do a part two to this because I got a fresh revelation. I mean, we ain't gonna do it right now, but the Lord has spoken. Okay,
so stay
so when part
tuned.
two come, woo,
stay tuned for part 2. And if you've got some myths, if you're listening, you're watching, and you've got some myths that you want us to bust that you're working through, let us be your community. Let us be that space for you to to share that, digest that, and get a fresh perspective, a fresh revelation and perspective so that you can move forward, right? And how did Dana say it? Better forward, right? So you can be better forward. And know that if failure has been haunting you, remember, it's not a dead end. It's just a detour and or a slight adjustment. A detour or a slight adjustment to help you in the future. That future that God has promised you. That future that he has a plan for you to give you a hope in the future, right? So that's what it's there for, and I hope that blesses you. And until next time, we'll see you again on our next Sense Monday. It sounds like it's going to be a part 2 according to Candace, so I will go ahead on and follow, subscribe, and make sure you turn on those notifications so you know exactly when part 2 hits the streets. And we'll see you next time.
Take care.